think it was about, I know it sounds really silly, but about being brave. So when I first moved to London, I stayed with the same company for stability.
I get you.
And I just thought, why am I always playing it safe?
I get you.
Like you need to, like there's this quote, and I don't know if it's by, and let me just make sure I get it right. Yeah, so somebody says, what if I fall? And the other person says, oh, but my darling, what if you fly? And I just think that's so nice. Like, what if you fly? Like, go for it and just do it.
Yeah. Sunam Ikhlaq, Research Director, Simpson Carpenter. Thank you for having us. How are you?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Thank you for asking me to take part. I thought, what an amazing opportunity, and it could be fun.
It is fun sometimes. It's fun every time. Except for when we're having like really deep emotional chats and we have a little cry afterwards.
I get the tissues ready.
We've got some tissues there. No, thank you for agreeing. And I'm really interested about your journey. I remember when I was talking to you previously about doing this, because we were talking ages ago about doing this. Yeah. Your journey is interesting for me because it's like you've come from sort of my side of the desk and then transitioned over onto my client, the researcher's side of the desk. And I think that it's quite rare that happens. So I thought it was going to be very interesting hearing your story. But before we get into that, how have things been? It's summertime, 2020 in London is piping hot, and you've got a newborn, right? Well, not quite newborn. It's going to be one.
It's going to be two.
Going to be two.
It's going to be two. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be two.
See, time flies by.
Time really flies by. I remember when you was maternity.
Yeah.
So you're coming into the terrible twos. How's it been starting?
Do you know what? He's lovely, apart from the not eating and not sleeping.
Yeah.
Everything else is fine.
Yeah.
There's a random artwork left on the walls here and there around the house, against my wishes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's really lovely. So yeah, it's been.
My son, when he turned 2, that was when he like signed his contract with the devil and just became like the biggest nightmare. Are you got any of that going?
Well, he turns 2 tomorrow, so I'll let you know. Midnight. He just like grows horns.
It's like, little tail comes out. It's a real thing. But you said it's been a year here at Simpson Carpenter.
Yes, I joined in October 2021. So yeah, it's almost a year really.
Yeah.
And it's been busy non-stop.
Yeah.
But really good. It's a really nice team, which is really lovely. And yeah, we're slowly getting back into the office. So we have like Wednesdays, which is our day where we get to come in and just see people, which is I think is really important. And also change of scenery, so you're not doing your laundry and your dishes during your lunchtime. And
Zoom calls in boxer shorts.
Yeah, exactly, all that kind of stuff. So it's nice to like come in and do all of that too. Yeah, so it's really good. Yeah.
What sort of work are you doing now? Is it the same sort of thing as? Because I remember you from Trinity, Trinity McQueen. I was surprised when you moved, but then it seems like lots of people have been moving around. But what's it been like in terms of the work that you're doing now? What sort of stuff is it?
Yeah, so basically at Simpson Carpenter you have like 3 teams, and you have the pharma team, you have automotive, and then you have the consumer team, and I sit within the consumer team, and that's essentially split into 2. So you have like the qual and the quant, and I'm in the qual side. So occasionally I'll do a little bit of quant, but I try not to do too much, or let them know I know what I'm doing. And otherwise they'll get me looking at data tables. But yeah, that's essentially what I do. So I work in the consumer team, work with like a lot of retail clients, grocers, those types of people. So it's not completely dissimilar to what I did at Trinity McQueen.
Yeah.
I suppose it's just different types of clients really.
different sort of clients? Is there like a secret sauce? Obviously, we can't really share the secret sauce, but is it what I'm trying to say? Is the sort of way of working a bit different, or?
I think it's just been nice to work with different people, and obviously at Trinity it's really lovely because you have like the Leeds team, the London team, and obviously I think that's become a bit more blurred because of like COVID, and I think people work really flexibly now. But it's just been nice here to like learn from some of the other people. So like my line manager in particular, RuPaul, she's worked client side, so her whole kind of like outlook is very commercial, and it's just been nice to be able to have her almost like mentor me and give me some sort of tips in terms of like what clients are really looking for.
Wow.
So I think that really helps when you're making sure like reports are really actionable, and it's not just telling them stuff for the sake of telling them. Like, they can act off the back of it, which has been really nice. And everyone just got loads of experience, so it's just nice to work with.
Now you're getting the experience from like all sides of the industry. Start up your own thing one day. So tell me a little bit about like how you came into the industry. I always ask everyone, I'm gonna try, if you can, not to use the words "I just fell into my career."
Oh, that's really hard, isn't it? Do you have a buzzer that will just go if I say that? Yeah.
Everyone says it, but if it's the truth, then go for it. But what was your story?
Yeah, so basically, I wanted to be a dentist.
Really?
So I did like chemistry, biology, sociology for A levels, and I was like, right, I'm going to be a dentist, but only for like money and status. I didn't actually want to be a dentist and sit in a tiny room.
They do make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's a type of job that I guess particularly, people of colour with, our backgrounds and our families, not me particularly Jamaican, but I know, lots of Asian, a lot of African. If you're a doctor or you're a lawyer, you've got it covered.
Exactly. I thought, I could work for like 6 months and then go on holiday for 6 months. But yeah, this is the kind of life I want. But I was terrible at chemistry, horrendously bad at it. And it's funny because my dad did a computer science and IT degree, and even he couldn't explain some of this stuff to me, and I just thought, this is not for me.
Is there a lot of chemistry in being a dentist?
Yeah, you have to do the sciences basically. But I was good at biology, and I was really good at sociology. I felt I didn't have to put so much work into it; it just came quite naturally. And I remember getting to the very end and having to apply for UCAS, and I spoke to my sociology teacher and I said, yes, sir, so I think I'm going to do clinical sciences, and then I'll get the grades and then I'll apply for dentistry. And he just said, this is the worst idea that you've ever had. And I was like, why? And he said, you should just do sociology at uni, you're really good at it. And I said, yeah, but what am I going to do? What will I be? And he said to me, and I won't ever forget this, he said to me, you'll be happy.
I love that.
Oh my goodness, he's right. He's absolutely right. And I did it. And he was completely right. It was the best choice. So I did that. I went to Newcastle Uni, 3 years, studied there. And then it was the recession. So I thought, right, I need to do a degree that's much more vocational, where I can be a grown-up and have a proper grown-up job. So I did a master's in human resource management.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. All right. Go on.
Yes. And I basically had Monday to Thursday doing the masters, and then on Friday there was a CIPD qualification, where it's a chartered qualification.
Right.
And there were so many people who would just join us for that Friday because they were already working in HR, they were HR professionals, but they needed to do it to kind of elevate their career. And being around those people, and they were so passionate about it, I just thought, I'm not. I don't think this is for me. But the parts that I really loved was the research element. I loved doing my own project, which was about emotional labour and how we measure that and what that means and how we sort of harness that in the workplace. And I thought, this is kind of the route I need to go down, so let's kind of explore that a bit more. So I kind of wrote off HR. Essentially, I wanted to listen to people but not about their problems.
Oh, that's a good, I can see the connection actually.
Yeah. Opinions but not problems.
Opinions. but not, hey, so-and-so did this and that.
I don't care. How did it make you feel? Yeah, so I thought probably something more research related. And then I was living in Leeds at the time because I did my master's at Leeds Uni. And I was on the bus and I just went past this like tiny chapel building that said Face Facts on the outside. And I thought, and it said Face Facts Research, and I thought, oh, research, I wonder what kind of research they do. And I got in touch with the lady who started it, called Alison, and I just said, you know, I've just done a master's, but I will come and work for free. Like, I just need some work experience. Like,
But they were like, yes, please.
Yeah.
Sure.
I need something on my CV, please. And she was like, yeah, great, come in. And then I turned up on the Monday, and there'd been some sort of incident, and we couldn't basically get into the building. I think it was like arson or something. It was really awful. And she said, oh, everyone back to my house, we'll go and work there. And I said to her, I really don't know you. So, you know, stranger danger. So I'm going to just go home and just call me next week when you've got, you know, a building for us to work out.
But if that happened like in these days now after COVID and all that, it would have probably been like, yeah, cool, because everyone's used to it.
Yeah, you
but
just
I can imagine back then it's like, what?
Exactly.
Back to my house.
Yeah, I was like, no, thank you. And then eventually I went in and I kind of just sort of had to learn like how they work and what they do. And eventually they had like an opening on like the Catty call centre, and you could do that from home. So I did that, and again, I was not very good at it. So essentially it was phoning people and getting them to complete a survey over the phone.
That's how I got into it as well.
But it was people who were part of like social housing, and it was about repairs and to what extent are they happy with their repairs. Now their repairs had never taken place, which is really awful, and there were, you know, families with children and their boilers had been broken for like 2 weeks and it was cold, it's winter, and you're like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you? I don't know why I'm doing this, I had a headset on, but you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you? And they're like, well, it's not been done. Like,
no one's come, we're freezing, so 0.
Exactly. And then some people would just say, I don't have time, and I'd say, okay then, thank you, bye. So my strike rate was horrendous. And they said, why don't you just come into the office and we'll find you something to do here instead? So I went in. instead, and just started sort of helping out in general with stuff like that. And then they had a client called Platypus Research, so they're a specialist kids and youth agency up in Batley, so just outside of Leeds. And I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. So I managed to get some work experience with them for about 3 months. I think they paid for like my travel and my lunch or something. And then they took me on like full time. Okay. And that was incredible because we worked with like huge brands and, you know, like the Disneys and Nickelodeon, all really like.
But this is now transitioning into research.
Yeah. So less field work and more like the analysis side of it, because that's what I missed, because I thought I'm collecting all the research and then it's just going into a hole and I don't know what's being done with it, and I want to.
It's the story of my life. That's one of the things I hate about doing field work is like you get so much information and you kind of think, oh, this is all really interesting. I wonder what's going to happen, and then.
Yeah, exactly.
You never hear it. You never know.
I'm asking you questions now, but do clients ever tell you like the outcome?
Sometimes I ask them. Yeah. Like sometimes I don't. Yeah. If it's like, you know, car insurance or something, I'm like. But if it's really interesting, I do sometimes reach out like, what happened? Sometimes they can tell us. Sometimes it's like top secret, you know. Yeah. But yeah, it's the one downside of field work. But go on. Yeah. So you've moved over to Platypus now. Yeah. You're in the research. You're dipping your toe into the research world now.
And I loved it. It was so good. And it just really, like, now obviously I have my own child, but at the time I was just kind of going in blind and just trying to make up stuff as I was going along. And I remember one time we were working on a project, I think it was for Disney actually, and we were doing some sort of like ad testing with young children and saying, you know, if you saw this, what would you do? Like the call to action. Would you pause it? Would you go and tell your parents? You know, what would the situation be? And I made these paddles so they could vote, and I wrote, you know, what they would do. And I said, here, you can hold. I think there were like 4 or 5, And I said, oh, to the mum, they can vote with these paddles. And she was like, they can't read. I was like, of course they can't read. Like, I knew that. So I just thought, I know nothing about children. But by the end of it, I think I was there maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
I felt like I soaked up quite a lot of information.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just a really, really fun place to be. And yeah, it was kids and youth, but it was more about family and dynamics and parents and teachers being gatekeepers and all the rest of it. So again, that was just like brilliant to work on. And then I found Trinity McQueen, who at the time were called Brass. So they were part of the marketing.
I didn't realise they were Brass. I remember the name. Okay.
Yeah, they were part of like a marketing comms agency.
Yeah.
They were like the research arm.
Yeah.
So when I went for my interview, they said, we're going to change our name, but we're not sure what it's going to be. I remember my parents saying, is this a legit company? Like, it doesn't sound it, but it was. And yeah, they were just brilliant. So I decided I was definitely going to do just qual by this point. And it was relatively small when I joined, and then it just grew and grew and grew. And again, lots of like variety in terms of like projects and clients. So you're not really bored. There's something like different every day.
But what made you want to jump over? Like, what was so you're at Platypus.
Yeah.
Was it like you needed to go? They were.
No, I think they were just quite small. So I think there was only
wanted
about 5 of us. Yeah, and at the time I don't know. I think I was maybe like 22 or 23, and I just thought, I want to be in a bigger company when I'm just like learning off loads of other people, and there's just a bit more opportunity in terms of like training and that kind of stuff. I mean, they were all brilliant, like researchers, but I think I just wanted to be a little bit more with people my age, I guess, which I think is the case when you're a bit younger. Like
that makes sense.
You want that, and the whole social side of it.
And the lifestyle as well. And it's, okay, in a bigger company, I guess there's more to learn, there's more growth. Yeah. More money can be made as well.
Yeah, all of the above, exactly.
All of the above.
So I was with them, I think, for a couple of years, and then my husband got a job in London. So I said to them, could I just transfer down to the London office? Like, do you think that would work? Because obviously I'd be working on different accounts with different clients. I think I said to them, I'm happy to just go sit on a beanbag if there isn't any space in the office. And they were like, you won't need to sit on a beanbag, but you can go, it's fine. Which was amazing because they were able to accommodate that, which was fantastic because, you know, I didn't want us both to be like changing jobs and moving to a new city and everything changing. So that gave me like a lot of stability, which was really great. Stayed with them for like a very long time. And then I went on maternity leave and I had my son. And then I think just because so much had changed, and I think like your priorities just kind of change a little bit, and you think about like what you want and what's important. And I just thought I need to just be brave and just kind of go for it. And it was a really good opportunity. I don't think I was ever like actively thinking about moving. It just an opportunity came up and I just thought it's now or never, let's just go for it. And then I joined Simpson Carpenter.
Oh, if it's okay, I want to try and unpack that last bit just a little bit. Like you said, you know, what were the sort of things you were thinking and feeling? What were the things that you were like, this is an opportunity? It wasn't just money, surely. It was...
Yeah, I think it was about, I know it sounds really silly, but about being brave. So when I first moved to London, I stayed with the same company for stability.
I get you.
And I just thought, why am I always playing it safe?
I get you.
Like you need to, like there's this quote, and I don't know if it's by, and let me just make sure I get it right. So somebody says, what if I fall? And the other person says, oh, but my darling, what if you fly? And I just think that's so nice. Like, what if you fly? Like, go for it and just do it. Yeah. And also, like I said, having a child makes you very brave because you're like, look at what I just did. Yeah. And I didn't get a medal for it, but I did it. So I can do anything. Honestly, I felt like I could be the president or Beyonce. I had so much confidence.
Other than that, I could slam dunk over LeBron James like nothing.
Exactly. I was like, he's got nothing on me. Like, I can totally do it. So I think that had a big part to play in it. And then I just thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? You know, like.
I think you are onto something though. I felt, obviously I didn't give birth, although you might be mistaken, both for thinking so. But having a child, I think it does sort of change something in your mind, where you just feel like, I have to be brave. I have to make those moves, even if I'm uncomfortable. I owe it to them to try and be the best that I can be, and if that is taking a risk, then bring it on.
Yeah, because you're no longer the most important person in your life.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of, like you said, do it for them and do it for yourself. So yeah, I did it, and here I am. Yeah.
I want to ask you something, because a lot of people not from London talk about how London-centric and Southern-centric the research industry is. And I know there's a lot of talk now about having more events up in the north and, trying to put more focus on that and less on London. You being, having the experience of working in both, and I don't know how, say, social you are, like in the events and, what's going on in the other regions, but have you noticed a difference in terms of culture, in terms of opportunities that the industry has when you're in the two different sides of the country?
Yeah. I mean, I think that used to be the case, especially I think when I was at Platypus, clients would favour London clients just because it was so much closer. I think obviously, like we're saying, COVID has completely changed stuff because you can be anywhere and still be really close to your clients and get to know them really well. And also being at Trinity McQueen, their head office is in Leeds. So again, they worked with like huge clients and big brands up there. I do think there's still a little bit of way we can go in terms of like balancing that out. I think most of like the conferences and the big networking events are still down here in the south. Yeah. And I do think sometimes we miss out a little bit in the north, but then, there's been this kind of like movement of people actually moving out of London. Yeah. So not only from like a research point of view in terms of like employees, but big brands, like I think Channel 4 moved up to the north, like relatively. I think they moved up to Leeds, I believe. I want to say to the old Majestic nightclub building.
Very specific. Okay, there you go.
I might just be making that up. You might have to edit that out.
Oh, Google it. We'll put a little label, not
this
true.
Is false information. Disclaimer. They haven't moved to the Majestic building. But I think there's a lot of that because. But I think by brands just being in the south, we're missing out on other voices and other cultures and other opinions, and I think it's really important to have that representation as well. Because London is so diverse, but there's pockets of diversity like all over the UK, and I think we kind of miss out on that if we don't make sure that there's some sort of like presence there.
No, I think you're spot on with that. It's one of those things like, I'm very passionate about diversity of the research that we do. That's why Guinea Pig is specialising on seldom heard. I'm very passionate on the diversity of the industry. That's why we set up Core. That's why there's a few other things that are in the pipeline to try and help that. But I think you're right. The other areas of England, you think less about them. Even the non-diverse little countryside, I mean, really, the only way that they're getting a voice in the industry is by coming into London. It's like, or some sort of city. So I think, why not quirks in Edinburgh?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, why not?
Why not? I love Edinburgh. I feel like, when we talk about some of these other places, like some of the smaller towns, we almost see them in quite a stereotypical way, like certain things come to mind. I just see
fields.
Fields and sheep, or like when we think about Bradford, we think, there's a high Asian population there. But then we don't think actually there's so much other culture and so much richness, and Manchester, there's so much in terms of media and all that kind of stuff that they're doing. It's such a huge hub when it comes to that kind of stuff.
I was in Bristol a couple months ago, and it was the first time I was in Bristol, and I'm looking around this is London. This is more diverse than some parts of London. It's just crazy. There is different areas. It's not just all about London.
Yeah, it's not.
All right, so let's move it on then. tell me what it is about research that you love so much.
Okay, apart from being a nosy Parker and wanting to know everything about everybody, not the problems, just the opinions. Just to make that clear. I think I've always like had a fascination with people and trying to understand them and like understand dynamics. Like I come from a really big family. I'm like one of 5 children,
Really?
and each one of us, even though like 2 of them are like twins, all of us are so different as people.
Yeah.
And I think that's so fascinating how you can come from the same like household under the same roof, but you can have such different attitudes and such different behaviours. And I just think, well, if there's so much diversity just in one household, like what about, you know, the rest of the population in terms of what we think and how we feel? And I just really love to kind of like get into that nitty gritty grey area where it's a bit muddy and it's not really clear, and then just making sense of it and just trying to understand it.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I get a similar thing. It's like, you know, there's an old saying, wasn't it? It's kind of a saying towards like your reaction to bad things, but it's kind of like true in life, is that the 2 brothers, they were sons of an alcoholic or something, and one of them became an alcoholic and the other one never touched alcohol. And when you ask them both the question, why, they say, because of my dad. You know, so it's like the same thing happened, but 2 different outcomes from it. And that's like life, you know, so understanding like the whys behind people's is goes so much deeper and deeper. You can continually unpack and unpack. And
that's quite such a good example. I wish I had thought of that.
Oh, it's a saying. Like when anyone says to me, "Oh, it's because of X," I just pull that one out of the bag. Like, hey, what about that?
Yeah, it's a really good example.
But no, I agree with you. And I also am on the tip of like, you know, I feel like research can save the world, and it does save the world. If you look behind every cause or every protest or whatever, you see X% of da 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 da. It's, you know, this is what we do, but yeah, it's, you know, the coolest job in the world, but yeah, it's still seen as lame, boring, looking at Excel sheets or holding clipboards.
Yeah. But you know, earlier when we were talking, when you arrived, about The Apprentice,
Yeah.
and how they let us down by doing a market research survey of 2 people and then saying 50% of people really like this lame product that we've come up with, so I think we should go for it. Yeah. I mean, if that's the only like point of reference young people have,
it's true, you know.
It's a shame.
Should actually get Alan and get Mr. Sugar on the phone, but hey, sort it out. Next season we want a full episode. It's always Ivy that they do it as well as at Bob's place.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, Ivy. Yeah, I think he lives quite close to me actually, not far from me.
I wouldn't be surprised. Everyone's connected to Bob in some way.
Yeah.
What would you suggest other ways of, you know, getting young people, or not even just young people, old people, you know, people who have lived life? Because I'm sick of the idea that, you know, we need to be getting youngsters. What about people who have actually had some life experience and then can actually bring that to the table? It's way more valuable than someone who, you know, hasn't lived any life, in my opinion. But what would you do if you could change a few things for the industry? Yeah. What would you do to make it more cool?
I think make it more cool.
Make it more attractive. Like, you know how like being a lawyer or something, or being in marketing or advertising or whatever, it has a sort of
Mad Men.
Yeah, it's got a sort of like swag to it, you know. Is it TV shows? Is it what? Like what would we do?
I think for like because we talked about like older people who potentially might have not thought of it as a career. I think just showing them like that they have so many of the skills that are transferable into the world of market research. You know, like being really like analytical, for example, being a people person, like all those types of things are really important. So it's not necessarily that they're going to have to start from the bottom and work their way up. Like it's still possible to have that in if you're a really curious person, for example. But then I think for like younger people, it is about showing them that it's cool. And what I would love to do is, if I get the opportunity, is actually go into schools. You know, you have like a doctor who comes in and they tell you about how hard it was to become a doctor and all the steps you need to take.
Yeah.
Somebody from the market research industry to say, actually we get to do all of these cool things. We get to work with like really amazing brands, and we get to make a difference. Like the most exciting thing for me was I worked on like a kids like fragrance product type of thing. And then I remember seeing it in Sainsbury's, and I was like, this is amazing. And I made my husband like stop and take a photograph of me holding it. And then he was like, this is the most loser like thing to do. I mean, he's very supportive, but I think he just wanted to go home at this point. And I was like, no, it's a product I worked on. And I'm just so excited. It's finally like made it into the shop. That's incredible. And feeling like part of that journey, I think is so valuable. I think if we could show that, I think that would potentially make people kind of consider
It's funny you mention it, because I get a similar kick. Like, I don't do the actual research, but let's say I'm recruiting. It's happened so many times. You'll get a project, you're recruiting the people for it. All you're talking about for 2 weeks is this thing, and then you switch on the telly, and there's the advert for it, and you're like, oh, there it is again. You know, it's happened so many times. So you see a billboard go by, like, I worked on that one, I know about it. You say, hey, you know what, you know?
And how you end up knowing like so many random things about lots of stuff. Like, I think we'd be really good at a pub quiz, or, you know, in Mastermind, they have like the general knowledge round. I think we would be amazing at it.
It's brilliant, There's so many questionnaires and screeners written, I know this.
Exactly, far too much. But that's the thing, like, there's so much variety. Like, one day you're working on like a pet food project, and then next you're working with a university. Like, it's just so varied. You're never going to be bored. I think that's important.
What's your favourite, if you have a favourite? In fact, let me rephrase. Tell me about the most interesting project that you've worked on in the last year.
Okay, so I worked on a really, really lovely project. It was just really interesting. The audience were really incredible to work with as well, but it's essentially about trying to get people to recycle more, and obviously that's like very current. So it's about, you know, not just throwing things away, not just like hoarding them and you end up being on that TV show where you can't basically see your carpet, it just piles everywhere. But it's about how we can do that and how we can kind of change behaviour. And I just found it so fascinating, because behaviour, so like attitudes are really like deep rooted, aren't they? Like, they come from where we live, our gender, like our ethnicity, our background, everything delicious and interesting that makes us really shapes our attitudes and our perceptions. But if we can kind of like nudge people into behaving in a certain way over time, that can influence their attitudes.
Interesting.
Yeah, because attitudes are so hard to change.
But usually you would say it's the other way, right? The attitudes shape the behaviour.
Okay, so say for example, I'm trying to convince you to recycle, and you're like, no, I can't be bothered, it's just going to take too long, the recycle point is too far away. So I bring that recycle point closer to you, I put it right outside your house, for example, and I make it easier for you to do it, I facilitate that. And there's a benefit for you, because it means you're not having to take out your, I don't know, general waste bin as much. That's a direct benefit for you. Are you more likely to do it? Potentially.
Probably,
Over time, you might see recycling is not a bad thing, actually. It's saving me time. It's not that much effort. Maybe recycling is something I can get into. But it was about that, really. And it was just really fascinating speaking to lots of different people with varying degrees of kind of like interest in actually wanting to do it. And I'm terrible at recycling, by the way.
I'm the worst.
Because like where we live, I was talking to everyone in the office about it not long ago, but we have, I think, 4 bins. So we have like the waste bin, we have just a card and paper bin, and then we have an everything else bin with like jars and cans and stuff. And then we have a food waste bin. We never put anything in the food waste bin. Like, everything goes in the general waste, and that's terrible. Like, I feel like I should be doing it more. So it's interesting to see like how you could facilitate that and make it a lot easier for people. Because it's so like current as well, isn't it? It's like such a hot topic, trying to get people to
Did you find like people's behaviours did change?
So this was about trying to figure out what would make them do it. So it wasn't a study that we did over a period of time.
Right.
But that would be amazing to go back to the same people a year from now to say, has it changed your feelings?
I'm finding a lot more of these like year-long projects. quite a lot more. It's interesting, very interesting. I feel like I should have been a researcher more than a field worker.
How do you keep people engaged for such a long period of time?
With difficulty. No, not really that difficult. If the project's good and they're interested in it, they've got a decent incentive, and you're just on top of reminders and checking in and stuff like that, it's fairly easy. You get a couple dropouts, but not that much.
You're just good at what you do. Keep people engaged.
I mean, everyone has those nightmare projects that just doesn't matter what you do, it just won't happen. Yeah. But by and large, our projects seem to go pretty smoothly. So, yeah, we're doing something right. But the long-term ones I think are the really interesting ones, because if you can see where someone was at the start of the year, for example, and then through like this project you're talking about, for example, if you could see a year later, after them using the recycling stuff, putting it in, did the attitude change? Because it's kind of like, for me, I'm relating it to like the gym, like before you go or before you start going, it's like, oh my God, that's going to be torture, it's going to be horrible, if you just go and, be a bit consistent with it. A month later, I love the gym, oh yeah, So it's a change of the attitude,
It's a feeling afterwards, isn't it? It's not like the process of getting you there, because that sounds like horrible and like laborious, doesn't it? But it's that kind of like end goal, like how you're going to feel.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's the same, like trying to kind of communicate that to people.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. What else was I going to ask you? About projects. Let's just talk about like the future. Like what's the end? Do you have like big a vision in your mind of where you're gonna be 5 years, 10 years, take over the whole industry, the world?
Queen of market research.
The queen of market research, or what's the plans for the future for you?
I think like maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I always thought, okay, so I've worked like fieldwork agencies, fieldwork side, and then I've done clients agency. And now maybe I'll go client side. But everyone I've kind of spoken to who's gone client side ends up kind of missing the agency life.
It's the variety.
Yeah, and I think it's that. So I mean, I always thought that would be the goal, but I'm not sort of sure anymore. I'm not completely close to it, but at the minute I'm really happy in terms of just being here, working on like the projects, the variety, like we've said, and just working with like a really great team of people. So I think, I don't know.
They're happy.
Yeah.
You've had a child. It starts thinking.
I just come to work for a rest now. I just come for a sit down and to drink a hot cup of tea.
Yeah, and not hear the noise.
Yeah, and then just kind of be, left alone for a little while.
Yeah, my wife always complains about me, like, you at least get to go and work and have fun. I'm like, what? But it's true.
You get to speak to adults, which I think is really, really
you get to just disconnect. Yeah, but I'm stressed with work. It's not the same.
It's just different types of stresses, isn't it? Yeah, it's completely different. But so for now, I think I'm pretty happy kind of doing this, and there's enough to kind of like keep me interested and like motivated and all that kind of stuff.
What would you say to someone, starting out in their career now? What would be your, let's say, 3 pieces of advice that you would give to someone starting out in their career as a researcher?
Oh, as a researcher, that's really interesting actually that you clarified on that. Because my brother's just finished uni and he's like interning. And I think it's similar advice in terms of like what I've said to him. Like I said to him, you've just got to hustle. Because, I had a degree and I had a master's. And even then I said, look, I'm going to work for free. I just need to get some experience in my CV, and I need to know if I like it. It's not just about whether they like me, it's about whether this is right for me and this is what I want to do. So I'd say get all the experience you can, like work for free if you have to, just soak up like all that information, all that knowledge. And I'd say like find somebody you can like really trust, in terms of somebody who can give you really good advice.
Like a mentor.
Yeah, like a mentor. And I don't always like to be like, it has to be a mentor, but just somebody who, you might have had an interview and you might have not got it, but you've kept in touch with that person.
Yeah. I think labeling it a mentor makes it sound official, but we're just talking about relationships that have that sort of mentoring element to it. I've got dozens of people in the industry who have, you know, they've helped me, they've given me, even if it's a tiny little nugget of advice, and I'll go back and say, hey, what do you think of this, da 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 da. So yeah, I think that, yeah, I can understand reason. What's the third one then?
The third one, so I can't remember her name now, this is really awful, but there's two ladies who wrote a book called Squiggly Careers. I don't know if you heard of it. I'm probably going to find out after this and like let you know, and it'll be irrelevant because you will have gone home. But she essentially said, like, when we start off in the world of work, we think our careers are really like linear, and it's like a staircase. So, you know, you finish uni and you get your first job and blah, 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 blah. But actually it's more like this, and it's kind of like all over the place. And you might, you know, work for a bit and then decide actually it's not right for you, and you want to kind of use those skills elsewhere, so you go somewhere else. You might think, actually, I'm missing some skills, so you might retrain and do like an evening course perhaps, or you know, whatever it might be. And then, you know, you might go client side and come back to agency, and it's not that
I love that.
straightforward as I think people think it's going to be. And I think it's because we compare ourselves to everybody else. You know, we think by the time I'm this age, I should, you know, have this job title and I should have this much money, and I think you're only in competition with yourself, and you're only going to push yourself. So that's kind of the only voice you should be listening to.
Yeah.
So I think those are probably the 3 bits of advice I would
That last one I absolutely love, and I feel like that is, I can relate to it because, you know, although I see everyone doing the sort of ladder thing, I never had that because I never finished school. So it was just sort of like finding something to do, scrabbling around. But having that freedom to just flex and say, well, I feel like this way, I feel like that way, I feel like it's actually proved better for me than trying to stay on this linear path. So it's a very good piece of advice. All right, look, thank you so much for having us. Really, 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 really glad we got it. What are you up to for the rest of the day?
I'm going to get some lunch.
Yeah.
And then try and do some more market research.
Yeah, some more market
That is
research.
the plan.
Sunam,
Thank you so much for having me.